Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Rant Line Radio, episode 560, coming to you on Monday, September 23rd. We're going to look back at USC's loss to the Michigan Wolverines in the Big House on Saturday. Talking a little bit more, play the Rant Line calls, open up the mailbag, and so much more. As always, you can follow us on Twitter at Rant of Troy, like us on Facebook, facebook.com/Rant of Troy, email address rantoftroy@fanside.com, and our phone number, 818-643-7227. Second What's Brewing Show. I'm your host, Michael Castillo, journalist, my co-host here in the Rancho Studio in Los Angeles, Alicia Dertola.
Hello, everybody.
Hello. You sound great.
Do I?
You do. Like you really sound great. I think the audio's coming in perfect.
Yeah.
We've never had to redo this ever again, and personally, I think you've never sounded better.
I sure hope so. I've certainly felt better than I currently do right now.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a little bit on the injured list.
Yeah. Hey, that's a HIPAA violation.
That is a HIPAA violation.
Sorry.
Apparently my birthday dinner was a super spreader event of some sort of stomach virus. So
yeah,
I've had a really great weekend, guys.
Yeah, all the Dertolas are
literally all of us
on the shelf,
except for my older brother, who I say has the superior genes of the elder brother's stomach.
Hey, I avoided it. I was like,
yeah,
I was shimmying away like West Texas Mike would want me to, away from that thing. So you've been under the weather the last couple days. We usually try to do a rewatch, and then ideally we'd like to put up our grades here on YouTube up on Monday, but everything's just a little bit delayed that way because of that. But we got a bunch coming your way. But before we do, we want to let you know that this episode is brought to you by Underdog Fantasy. It's football season, and it's a long one, which means you got plenty of time to join America's favorite Underdog Fantasy app. You win up to 1,000 times your money just by choosing whether you think your favorite players will go higher or lower their stat projections. Just go on there, look to see what the projections are next week, what Miller Moss's passing yards projection is, and say whether or not he'll get higher or lower the number of yards. And you can put it all in there over on Underdog Fantasy. Making picks on Underdog is straightforward, and signing up is even easier. Just head over to Underdog's simple-to-use mobile app or UnderdogFantasy.com and sign up with the promo code Reign of Troy, all one word, REIGNOFTROY, Reign of Troy. Underdog will give you a free pick to use on your first cash pick'em entry, plus up to $1,000 in bonus cash when you deposit. That's Underdog Fantasy promo code Reign of Troy to claim your new customer special with a free pick and your deposit offer. Must be 18 plus, 21 plus in Massachusetts and Arizona, 19 plus in Alabama and Nebraska, and present in a state where Underdog Fantasy operates, including California. Terms apply. Void in Colorado. Concerned with your play, call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit ncpgambling.org. In Arizona, call 1-800-NEXT-STEP or text NEXT STEP to 53342. And if you're in New York, call the 24/7 Hope line at 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. Alicia, you guys, the Rotbots, called into the Rant Line after SC lost to Michigan. The Trojans succumbed to Michigan sort of having an underdog fantasy and beating the Trojans, who were 6-point favorites. Let's get to the Rant Line calls and see what the Rotbots had to say about it.
Hey, Randy Troy, this is Jackson in Arizona.
Nick from San Diego.
Hey, this is Michael in the 563.
Cameron from Fresco, Texas.
This is Josh from Dunkirk.
Rant Troy Radio. What's up? This is Dave from Orange County. That's just a devastating loss there.
We just lost to a team that couldn't throw the football.
Big plays bit them like they did last year.
It really felt like the opposite of last year, where our defense was so bad that our offense had to be perfect in order to, get a victory. It's like the offensive line was putting our offense in such a bad situation that our defense had to be perfect in order to secure this victory, and we just couldn't do it.
Play calling for the first 3 drives of the game were atrocious, and John Henson needs to be apprehended and looked into his background for his offensive line development.
They need to really take a look at the offensive line
and really figure out who are they going to be their tackles for the rest of the year, because it ain't looking good for Elijah Page and Mason Murphy as tackles. I'll tell you that 100%.
After the fumble recovery, you have to put the game away.
Questionable calls by Lincoln Riley. Questionable non-penalties by the referees. I really thought that we got rid of Pac-12 refs and got rid of Michael Mothershed, but apparently the spirit of Michael Mothershed lives on with that head referee of the Big Ten.
What the heck is going on? Kick catch interference, so many face mask penalties that went missed, holding on Jamil Muhammad, blindside block, terrible first down spot.
Overall, I'm feeling a lot better in terms of how well we'll compete in the Big Ten.
And as long as we keep improving, especially on the defensive side of the ball, and as long as we start to figure out what the heck's going to go with our offensive line, maybe we have a chance.
I mean, we're always talking about D'Anton Lynn, and he deserves a bunch of credit, but Matt Ince coaching those linebackers, I mean, man, Mason Cobb and Eric Gentry are having awesome seasons and are playing great football.
So many things that our defense did to keep us in this game, so many things that Miller Moss was able to do to keep us in this game. But ultimately, if you can't block people, I mean, those defensive ends from Michigan were just salivating.
I'm sorry that we lost, but they did fight on. They came back. I'm proud of them for their second half play.
This is just the next step in the process. So keep doing our damn thing and fight out.
We can do this. It's going to be a great season. Fight on, USC. Fight on.
Hopefully, we could beat Wisconsin.
Fight on, fight out, beat the Badgers.
Fight on.
There we go. Alicia, your thoughts on the Rant Line calls?
That's just a really deflated and sad Rant Line. And I get it. I don't know that there was I think there was certainly things to rant about, but this isn't the kind of loss that's going to get people like in the call just like freaking out. It's just sad. It's just big bummer.
Yeah, I think it's been a couple days. I think the thing about the SC Michigan game for me is that it's the closeness of it, in the sense of like SC was so like right there, like they were a few inches away from winning the game.
They tried so far, they tried so hard and got so far,
but
and in the end it didn't even matter.
Yeah. Rest in peace. What's his name?
Chester Bennington.
Chester Bennington. Yeah, that's right. I wanted to say Dexter, but Dexter is
Dexter
alive
Holland
and well,
is,
as far as
the offspring. Yeah.
Anyways, I think when you look at it, I think that like we were so close to being able to come on the pod and sit here and say, SC is 3-0. They've passed, every test, even when they got punched in the mouth like they did in the first half in Ann Arbor. They got up and they were resilient and they did all these things. But you can't say that when they ultimately lose, because then you can, you have to sort of sit here and, figure out why it didn't happen. It didn't happen for, a lot of reasons. Some of those reasons might be small, but some of them might be bigger, and they all add up to a bunch of things that you can look at and say, well, SC it's got to be better in this area and this area. They've gotten better in that thing and that other thing, and those gains are great. But if you want to be a national title contender, you got to be better in sort of all these areas. And SC has made big strides from last year, but still a lot to go. Yeah. Yeah.
Are we going to give all of our thoughts on the game, or are we going to do that later?
Let's do the news, and then we'll come back to the game.
Okay.
So let's get into the news really quick. All right, really quick news, because there's not much to get to here. AP poll is out. SC is down after the loss to Michigan from number 11 to number 13, just 2 spots. Gone are the days where you lose a close game and you lose 9 places. SC just loses 2. Michigan is up from 18th to 12th, just one spot ahead of the Trojans. Notable spots to know in the AP poll: Texas 1 still, Georgia 2, Ohio State 3, Alabama 4, Tennessee up to 5, passing Ole Miss. Oregon 8, Penn State 9, Utah. Remember Utah? They're number 10. LSU is 14, Notre Dame up to 16. That side of the poll just moved up slightly, ever so slightly. So the Trojans are number 11, down 2 spots from last week.
Yeah, like we talked about on the CarCast.
Sorry, number 13.
This wasn't going to be a game that was going to harm USC greatly in the polls. This is what is considered a quality loss, a 3-point loss on the road against a ranked opponent. Is never going to have you drop a ton. It does help USC that a lot of teams in the mid-teens lost on Saturday. Kansas State lost to BYU. Oklahoma State lost to Utah at Oklahoma State without Cam Rising. So, oof. Oklahoma lost. So there was a lot of movement in the mid-teens, which sort of prevented USC from dropping down because those teams all dropped down and there just wasn't room to really move.
Wait, are you saying the polls are multidimensional?
Yes, the polls are multidimensional.
Thank you.
Yes. So quite frankly, USC is still in a very good spot. USC is in a spot where they can easily move up into playoff places if they, win the games that are in front of them. And that's sort of where we expected USC to be. We expected USC to be hopefully 2-1 going into this stage of the season. And this stage of the season is now the tricky bit where you get out of that really difficult front end. And the next stage of the season is very much about taking care of your business, about proving that you can avoid slip-ups, and then see what you got against Penn State. Because for the next, let's say 6 weeks, 6 games, I suppose, there's only really one in there that USC won't be a heavy favorite. So this one is definitely, this stage of the season is definitely about proving that USC can keep their concentration and that they can use this time to get better week in and week out.
Yeah, absolutely. Still a lot of season left to go. Miguel in the chat says, I think we're a fringe playoff team, but I see 2 more losses ahead. Can still get to 10-win season with a bowl game.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I think that, 9 wins, I think, was just the conservative sort of benchmark for what the Trojans could have this season. I absolutely think 9 wins is more than reasonable left on the schedule. 10 wins is still there. SC is still able to do that. 11 wins would require winning out in the regular season, right? If you're going to talk about going 11-1 in the regular season, that's going to be hard to do.
But your toughest games are at home against teams that I think we all agree are very good teams like Penn State and Nebraska and Notre Dame.
Yeah.
But also not sort of the Georgia, Texas, Alabama level juggernauts.
There's nobody unbeatable on SC's roster. I mean, SC's schedule, but they could say the same thing about SC for sure.
Yeah.
I think that the offensive line woes, which we're going to get to in a few minutes, absolutely are sort of worrisome when you look at, opponents like Penn State and Notre Dame. But like you said, all those games are at home, and every single game for the rest of the year, if everything sort of stays the same as is, you have to imagine SC is going to be favored in all of them, in part because they're at home for all of those, all the tough ones. So, new game times out for this week against Wisconsin. The 28th of September, SC and Wisconsin, 12:30 p.m. on CBS. Another Nestler and Gary Danielson game. And then October 5th, SC at Minnesota will be at 4:30 p.m. Pacific, 6:30 time in Minnesota on BTN, the Big Ten Network. It's the is that the BTN debut, or was the Utah State game on BTN?
I thought the Utah State game was on BTN.
Was that on BTN? I don't remember. Anyways, any thoughts on those game times? I got nothing.
The Utah State game was definitely on BTN because I remember noting that BTN basically played instead of like doing a pregame show, they basically pregame right up to kickoff. They showed almost all of USC's pregame sort of festivities, running out the tunnel and Traveler and all that kind of stuff, which was kind of cool. So yeah, those are good times. No really negative times there. I think the noon kickoff, September 28th, is a slight danger for some of that classic California late September heat wave potential. Hopefully we don't have too much more of that coming, but you never know what the weather on September 28th is going to be.
Yeah. This is weird though, but is that a benefit? Against Wisconsin?
No, I don't want USC's fans sitting in heat. I hope it's a very pleasant
no,
September
but
day.
I'm saying like I think I don't think that hurts SC's chances of playing well in the game. I'm saying,
mostly I'm not a big fan of 12:30 games. I like a long lead up to games. I like a 5 o'clock game personally.
Yeah.
So USC at Minnesota, yeah, that's a good game time.
Yeah. Injury news. Lincoln Riley says that Makai Lemon is, quote, doing good. And Lake McCree is going to miss some time, but SC will, quote, get him back soon.
The big news there is that Lake McCree did not suffer a season-ending injury.
Yeah.
And I don't think that Lincoln Riley is BSing us the way that Kyle Whittingham likes to do sometimes with his quarterbacks.
I don't think you BS an ACL tear. Right?
Yeah. That makes me think this must be some sort of like a knee sprain.
It's so like something. It sounds vague, like
one of those.
Obviously, we don't know for sure, but
4-week kind of knee sprain things.
It could be a meniscus.
Yeah, and Makai Lemon, until proven otherwise, I'm just going to assume that he's going to be out for the Wisconsin game because it's quite likely to me that he suffered a concussion on that play. So hopefully he progresses well through whatever it is that they have to progress through. But considering what USC might have gotten coming out of this game in terms of injury updates, this is pretty good. I didn't see anything about Akili Arnold, which makes me think that that's not a super serious thing, but maybe nobody asked. So it doesn't sound too good though. I mean, it doesn't sound too bad though.
Yeah. For sure. One thing that sort of sounds sort of bad is Reggie Bush planning to sue SC, the Pac-12, and the NCAA for lost NIL money. This comes via Ryan Karchi, Bush's attorney. Levi McCathern said this in a statement. We appreciate that the new administration at USC is trying to pick up the pieces of the former administration's unjust and improper handling of Reggie Bush. However, the delay in fixing this speaks volumes. What do you think?
I mean, it's considering not too long ago we were talking about like when would Reggie Bush run USC out of the tunnel? Like it's a big bummer because I just think you're not going to have him do that while he has open litigation against the school. So that sucks. Definitely not something I wanted to see happen. From a sort of a litigation standpoint, I think that if Reggie wanted to sue the NCAA for his lost NIL potential, he's got to also include the Pac-12 and USC in that. I think you don't get to, put this lawsuit forward unless you have all of the parties involved in it. But this is also, I want to point out, plans to sue. Nothing has been filed yet. So my hope would be that, USC and Reggie come to some sort of pre-negotiated agreement so that this isn't going to be something that draws out or becomes ugly. Quite frankly, I think that USC is in such a weird spot because USC was disassociated from the NCAA. It's not like USC chose to not have Reggie Bush be around, and it's not like USC chose to limit any of Reggie's name, image, and likeness opportunities over those last 10 years.
Right.
But
they certainly would have been eager to.
But at the same time, Reggie did lose a lot of financial opportunities because he was not allowed to be associated with USC because of the NCAA doing all that stuff. So, it's It's just, it's just the way it goes. I don't hold any ill will for Reggie for this. I get that fans will hold ill will for this. To me, this is there's no hard feelings. On Twitter I compared it to when Stephon Johnson sued the school for negligence over his weightlifting accident. Like, yeah, that was always going to happen. No hard feelings. Let the lawyers figure it out.
Yeah.
It shouldn't. It doesn't have to damage the relationship between USC and Reggie Bush. I hope both parties don't let it get to that point.
Yeah, without knowing too much about everything, I don't exactly know what SC would be on the hook for here. This seems more like an NCAA thing that he'd want to get at the NCAA and maybe the Heisman Trust too. But all of it is legal stuff that you just hope takes care of itself.
Yeah, and
and you don't have to deal with.
I will say, what Thomas Adame in the chat says, I mean, he could have waited until after the season. Yeah.
But here's the thing with those, like, when there's no good time.
Yeah.
Also, like, maybe the report is that he plans to sue, right? Like, maybe he is waiting for the end of the season. Like, I don't know. Like, I don't think you sue based on like, well, I'm gonna make it better for the season or whatever. Like the timing. I don't. Does the timing really matter here? Like, I get that it's annoying to have it in the news for SC fans, especially when you're coming off the loss to Michigan.
I mean, again,
is there a good time for this?
Like, the polls are multidimensional, lawsuits are multidimensional too. He had, as far as I know, an open defamation case against the NCAA.
Yeah.
And this could be a negotiating tactic to say, hey, if you don't settle with us over this, we're just going to keep lodging other lawsuits against you until we get something. So the timing could be related to that other open litigation. We don't know.
Yeah. I don't know. Kaylee in the chat says, could there be statute of limitations? I have no idea. I wish I was legal and knew all the answers.
Yeah, I'm not sure on that one.
Yeah, I have no. I just got an art degree. Unfortunately, I didn't go to Gould. What do you?
I always thought it was Gould.
Gould. Yeah, didn't go there. Who did though? Rick Neuheisel. Did you know that?
I didn't know that. I thought you were transitioning into something.
No, I would just say he's a Trojan. He got his master's at SC.
Oh, good for him.
Like every Bruin does,
Yeah.
You're
a Bruin for 4 years and a Trojan for life.
Yeah, for sure. All right, let's get to talking about the game a little bit more. SC and Michigan, we sort of talked about it after the rants. Maybe we should have held the rants until now and played it, but you've had a couple days. We talked earlier. There's been an illness going around in the family. Not able to do the full detailed rewatch like normal. But any thoughts since it's been 48 hours?
I woke up on Monday morning feeling like I had maybe let Josh Henson off the hook a little bit in the CarCast. I sort of thought a little bit more about it, and while I understand that USC is in a tough position with a bunch of inexperienced offensive linemen playing in a really difficult environment against NFL level talent up front, the level of the performance was so bad that you can't even explain it away at that level. It was so bad that the more I thought about it, the more I thought that this was a tactical coaching issue, akin to when USC had against BYU when Brett Nealon was getting absolutely mauled by that nose tackle.
Tonga.
Cyrus
Tonga.
Yeah, Cyrus Tonga, and USC just never gave him any help or adjusted to the fact that their center was getting beaten on every play. Connor Morissette tweeted out today, not too long ago, Fresno State 9, Texas 8, Arkansas 11 combined to allow 28 pressures when they played Michigan. USC allowed 22. So that tells me like Texas, that might just be that Texas just has a better offensive line, better individuals on that offensive line. But like if Arkansas State and Fresno State are allowing half the pressures that USC allowed, that means that USC tactically got beat. That means that Wink Martindale brought something to the table that USC either didn't prepare for or didn't adjust to well enough. And part of that could be, USC needed to revert a little bit more to the quick passing game and screens and all that kind of stuff. But we saw them trying to run screens and those weren't working either. I think that Josh Henson failed to prepare his unit for this game and or failed to prepare his head coach for this game, because like if he needed help on that offensive line, if he needed max protect and all that kind of stuff, then like to me it comes down to Josh Henson kind of making that call or coming up with ways that USC's offensive line wasn't going to get beat the way that they got beat.
Mm-hmm.
So like obviously the individual players really weren't up to snuff, but you got to put them in a position to succeed. And it felt like whatever it was that USC was doing, and note, I have not rewatched the game. I normally like to rewatch the game and come in with fresh eyes and speak to all of that. But I think even beyond me rewatching the game, it's pretty clear that USC, outside of play calling, the performance of the offensive line was so deeply flawed that you do have to look at the offensive line coach and ask what happened there. Because I mean, I can look at the offensive line coach and point to, this is what happens when you aren't great on the recruiting trail and you miss on the high caliber 4 or 5 star guys in 2022 and 2023. And you're having to rely on sort of works in progress across that board. But at the same time, like you come in with what you would Elijah Page not be starting for Fresno State? Would Mason Murphy not be starting for Arkansas State? Would Alani Noah not be starting for Fresno State? Like, maybe not. I don't deeply know their offensive line situations, but I just think that level of a poor performance is a lot deeper than just Michigan had inherent advantages from a personnel perspective. Can I blame Bob Connolly for this? I mean, yes. Yes.
Yeah, a lot of the PFF stuff has been out there, that PFF gave SC's offensive line rating on a 100-point scale an 8. Ryan Karchi tweeted that he's never seen anything that low.
I mean, I'm looking at the PFF grades right now. Elijah Page, Mason Murphy, and Tobias Raymond got a 0 on pass blocking scores.
Yeah. I just so
Jonah Monheim was USC's highest rated offensive lineman in that game at 49.5.
Yeah.
For total score and 33.9 in pass blocking.
Yeah, and I would say even if you have a decent game, if you're Jonah Monheim, like how can you actually have a decent game because if you were if you're a Ron Yeri out there in the middle of everybody else who's not performing at that level, you're not going to look like Ron Yeri. You know what I mean? The traditional stats, the regular stats we use in the media stuff, we use a thing called Stat Broadcast, and I pulled up the Arkansas State game from a week ago, and they noted 3 quarterback hurries. You mentioned all the pressures. They noted 3 quarterback hurries. Again, this is just Stat Broadcast. This is like the official statistician keeping the stuff. This isn't like a PFF like rewatch of the all 22 film or whatever. But 3 noted pressures by the statistician, or the scorekeeper, against Arkansas State, and against SC it was 10. literally more than triple the amount. And like you said, all the literal pressures, that Michigan gave SC was almost as many as they had in the first 3 games. That it's alarming. I think you're right. I think that I think I am lenient towards the Trojans' offensive line play because of the recruiting stuff at the end of the Helton era and all that. But you're right. Like, you also can't say that there isn't that, like, yeah, there's no 5-star guys on this offensive line. But it's not like SC's offensive line is getting out recruited by Arkansas State, like you said. And it's about finding a way to sort of mitigate that. I know one of the things that I've seen a lot of chatter online, people saying that, SC's not taking sort of deep shots, that they're too conservative in the pass game. I think the part of the problem is when you have the offensive line not blocking for you the way that they are, long, deep passes are slow developing plays. You need protection there. I think we've all played, college football 25 by now. We all know that Zachariah Branch is a 97 speed receiver, and you throw a go route with him, in press coverage, it's an automatic touchdown. That doesn't work in real life because you don't have the protection to be able to throw that pass. And the stuff with the screens, I think, could have been better. I think my problem with the screen calls was sort of the types of screens that they were running, like the tight end screen to Lake McRae. We talked about it in the CarCast. Didn't really make a lot of sense to me. The shovel passes right up the middle multiple times. To me, a shovel pass is a high risk play. Like, either make it a regular pass, or shotgun over at USCfootball.com was saying, just hand off the ball then.
What USC did there was the worst of both worlds.
Yeah.
In that, there were 2 things USC needed to do: get a first down and run clock.
Yeah.
And running was not going to get them the first down, but it would have helped kill clock.
Right.
Those shovel passes did neither. They did neither. Mm-hmm. They didn't allow the clock to run, and they also didn't get anywhere near the yards because, again, the offensive line was getting beat so bad that, even those screen passes were getting blown up. So yeah, it's just all rough. But I've just been looking up the USC's offensive line recruiting. USC has signed 1 4-star offensive lineman in the Josh Henson era. Mm-hmm. They signed 1 offensive lineman in 2022, which I understand that was a difficult recruiting situation because the coaching staff came in late, but they didn't come in that late, and they needed to start stockpiling offensive line. Anybody could have told you that. Only getting 1 was not good enough. Mm-hmm. They signed Micah Benuelos, who's a 4-star, who isn't up there yet to play, and Jason Zandamela, who has since transferred. So
yeah,
the numbers have not been enough. The players that were available to them, particularly, I mean, it's one thing if you have a situation where we talk about how USC doesn't, I mean, Southern California, the West Coast doesn't really always produce a ton of elite level offensive linemen.
Yes. And I think
there have been offensive linemen who have come from California that USC has failed to grab.
Yeah.
Most of the top offensive linemen in California Brandon Baker goes to Texas. Eugene Brooks goes to Oklahoma. Manessa Itete goes to Florida State. That was all last year. In 2023.
Well, even, beyond just the last couple of years that, would be in Henson's purview, I think it's important to say that, yes, I think that the West Coast is at a disadvantage when you look at predominantly where are the big boys coming from, the big defensive tackles and the big linemen. A lot of them are coming from the South. A lot in Georgia, right? Like there's a reason that Georgia recruits are such a big thing. Like Georgia's turned into like the fertile ground of recruiting, right? But the thing is, like, there is offensive line talent to be had here. And then the flip side is it has not remotely stopped Oregon from having great offensive lines the last 5 to 10 years, right? Like they have had, Josh Connerly was someone that SC was in the mix for and didn't get. Penei Sewell was someone that they were in the mix for and didn't get. If you want to talk about literal California guys, Sean Ryan years ago was someone who picked UCLA over SC. There's been guys from Mater Dei that SC has not gotten to. So like, yeah, but California excuse doesn't really hold water here completely.
And that's why I'm frustrated, because like if it was just the recruiting, but development was happening at such a quick rate that it didn't make it matter that much.
Yeah.
You could have had a situation in this game where USC got beat on the offensive line, but we could point specifically to it just being, well, these are a bunch of, first year starters, still developing guys. This is the product of USC having a bare cupboard and all of that kind of stuff. But that's not what this was. Like if USC's offensive line across the board is putting up, just to go back to PFF grades, because again, I haven't rewatched the game, and so we're sort of a little bit relying on some of this. A bad offensive line performance would have been USC's offensive linemen putting in a range of, 50, of like 60 to 50, 65 to 50. USC's best offensive lineman graded overall, now I'm in overall grades, was Emmanuel Pregnon at 54, Jonah Monheim at 49, Alani Noah at 43, Tobias Raymond at 28, Mason Murphy at 27, and Elijah Page at 25. Like, that's half of what a bad performance is. Like if an F is a 50%, you're at least getting 50% of your questions right. But this was like a mega F where you're getting, 25% of your questions right. Like that's to a degree that's beyond just this is first time starters in a difficult position. So that's where I'm at with Josh Henson. But did you have anything more to say about the offensive line?
No, not
okay.
Not off the top of my head.
The last thing I want to say before we get to over under is there's been a lot of conversation about Zachariah Branch coming out of this game. And I think this is one of the biggest reasons why I'm sad that I didn't have time or brain power to do a rewatch, is because I didn't think he had the terrible game that people talked about him having. And again, PFF is not the perfect way to judge these things. It's certainly not a perfect system, but it's going to be useful for us here. Zachariah Branch was USC's highest graded offensive player at a 72. He was one of two players on the offense that graded over 70. From a passing perspective, he was by far USC's most effective from the eye test. From the PFF level, he was USC's most effective receiver. I think people are overreacting to what was a frustrating game overall for USC's passing offense, and sort of the blame game is getting pointed at Zachariah Branch because it's really frustrating when you don't have like a quote unquote dominant receiving performance. I'm just not sure what that dominant receiving performance is supposed to look like when your offensive line is what we just talked about. I don't think USC's receivers even got a chance to prove that they were going to be effective in this game because routes have to have time to develop. Like
that's certainly part of it. I think that, when we do the grades here on YouTube, which hopefully we'll have up by tomorrow, you can make sure that you're subscribed. If you're watching here on YouTube, hit the subscribe button, also the like button too. if you're listening to us on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, be sure to join us on YouTube to watch the grades as we go through the offensive and defensive grades for the Michigan game. I think that it's going to make it hard to talk about the offensive units because everything is affected by the offensive line, right? Like, I've been thinking about this for the last day. Like, how do you really, because I've seen, comments about Miller Moss, like, didn't put the team on his back, or he didn't do this, he didn't do that. And it's like, I don't think Miller Moss had the greatest game, right? Like, I think that's more than fair to say. At the same time, what exactly was he supposed to do? Like
I can tell you he had a much better game than the vast majority of quarterbacks would have done behind that offensive line performance.
Yeah, like, and the other thing, I like, you look at what SC did in the second half. They made adjustments. They moved the guys in the line around. This was still a game where SC in the second half were able to gain 260 yards. That's a 500-yard pace. You look at the per play averages in the second half, and SC was averaging 5.9 yards per play. Like, against Michigan, you take that. Like you take that, and especially when in the first half SC was only averaging 4.1. So, I go back to the Steve Sarkisian quote from years and years ago. I'm gonna butcher this, but like, sometimes it's gonna be shitty. Like, you gotta make chicken soup out of chicken shit, right? Or something like that. I don't remember what it is.
To be honest, I do not want to eat chicken soup made out of chicken shit, but I know I said the Zachary Bread stuff was going to be the last thing I said, but I do want to point out one more thing, because I'm now deep in the PFF grades. If you think that USC's offense, if you think that USC, if this game meant that USC can't handle it in the Big Ten, certainly on the defensive side of things, I want to call attention to Michigan's offensive line grades from PFF. Highest graded offensive lineman for Michigan was, hold on, I messed up this report. Shoot. I'm gonna do okay. Highest graded offensive lineman for Michigan was Miles Hilton with 65.9, so barely solid. Their center scored a 61.4. Their left guard 59.5. They had their right tackle was a 40. So as much as they, like, you can talk about the 290 rushing yards, USC's defensive line did really, really well against that Michigan offensive line. That wasn't Michigan's offensive line dominating USC's defensive line.
I think the 290 rushing yards really does a disservice for how this game played out too. When you think about the games in which SC got run over, you think about the UCLA game in 2018,
Stanford Power,
the Stanford Power game, yes. Boston College 2014. This is like not remotely one of those games, and they still almost gave up 300 yards. And, I know that you can't play the what if game, and you can't say, but you take it. I completely get that that's the case, but it like 3 plays. It was 3 plays. Mm-hmm. And we talked about it in the CarCast, but Michigan never had long drives. Like, they're scoring. They scored 20 offensive points. I guess 21 offensive points, because the missed PAT was on the pick 6, right? 21 offensive points. All of those had a 40+ yard run on those drives, 2 40+ yard touchdown runs and a 65-yard run that set up the other touchdown. Like, it's not like they were driving on SC, going on 15 play drives that got 75 yards. That was not the case. And the idea that SC lost to a team that couldn't throw the football, I'm sort of torn on that because absolutely, you lose to a team that's one dimensional. That's a problem. Like the optics are horrible on that, and it sounds horrible, looks bad, all those things, 100%. But I think that one of the things that you and I have talked about in the last couple days is, as one-dimensional as Michigan is, one-dimensional Michigan is still somehow better than two-dimensional Michigan, in the sense that, if they had to throw the ball, I think it would have been better for SC not to allow maybe the big gains, because I think they would have had deeper safety help. They wouldn't have stacked the box nearly as much as they did, which means that fewer levels of the defense to go through on those long runs. There's a reason that people don't go into field goal block just to stop the run, right? Like, you don't want everybody literally on the line of scrimmage. And so I think it would have helped in that sense. But Michigan's ability to be two-faceted, I think, would have also put them in more positions to make mistakes, which would have helped SC also.
USC was very unfortunate to not get the Michigan that decided, screw it, we're going to play Alex Orji and just run the ball a million times, because the Michigan of a couple weeks ago turns the ball over a couple times because their quarterback throws an interception too.
Yeah.
And
we
props to Michigan for figuring out what they could do and how to win this game. But the fact that they didn't throw the ball, was that they only threw 32 yards, was in the end not a detriment to them, because they took away, there was one weak link to this offense, and it was their quarterback turning the ball over, and they took that away, and that's how they survived this game.
Yeah. And with the big runs that they were able to break out, right? Like, I think if Michigan threw one pass in the second half, I think if they would have continued to try to throw, watching
the way Alex Orji was throwing the ball, I wish they had continued to try to throw, because there would have been an interception or two. And I think maybe that is the one area where, maybe if USC gets them in a third and longer situation, but at the same time, the reason they were 3 and out so often was because USC did get them into third and long situations.
They got 2 first
and
downs,
they didn't even throw
half
in those situations. So it's again, anyone who thinks that Michigan's offense dominated this game, dominated the even the rushing attack, is misunderstanding how the game played out.
Yeah. All right. Let's get to over under, and then we'll hit up the mailbag.
So you're going over. I'm feeling bold. Give me that over.
I'll go under. I got to take an under here. I got 3 unders to take.
I'm going to do an under here.
All right. Let's start with your first over under, which was 150.5 Michigan rushing yards. I took the over mostly because I thought that, this was going to be their main means of attack. And they most likely would have more than 150 yards of offense. So I took the over. Didn't quite expect 290, but alas, it was an over. So I get the over there.
Yeah, I certainly was not banking on Michigan saying screw it and and just choosing not to throw, because I thought that their offense they would try to be a little bit more balanced, and that would result in, a strong rushing performance, but maybe not 290 yards. I mean, if you take out the 3 big runs, if USC just doesn't lose their concentration 3 times in the damn game, this hits. But yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, but alas, it's a big over. My first over under was 4.5 Michigan tackles for loss. You took the over. This was an easy over. It ended up being 8. This was their most of the season. SC allowed 7 in week 1 against LSU, but 8 from Michigan on Saturday.
Yeah, I didn't trust USC's offensive line going into this game. I didn't expect them to be as bad as they were, but I certainly didn't trust them to not have a bunch of negative plays. So
yeah. Next one, you said over under 38.5 Michigan third down conversion rates. I took the under on that, and I got it. It was considerably under. Michigan wasn't great on third down, 26.6% for the Wolverines. And there's a comment in the chat from Miguel. SC didn't force them to throw. I beg to differ. I think SC did force them to throw. Michigan still didn't choose to throw. In that second half, they go 3 and out on their first 3 drives. In this game, their average third down distance was 5.4 to SC's 8.2. So their third downs were way more manageable than SC's, but SC's conversion rate was a lot better because SC was able to throw on third down a little bit better. On third and longs, 3rd and 9+, SC was 2 of 6, including a touchdown to Jacoby Lane in the fourth quarter to take the lead. Michigan was 0 of 3. Third down passing, Alex Orji was 3 of 3 for 13 yards, which means they were running the ball on third down more than ever. 12 rushes on was it 12 rushes? No, 10 rushes, 2 sacks on third down. So 12 rushing yardage plays in that sense on third downs. Like Michigan was choosing not to pass, in part because they knew that it was their least effective mode of offense.
And like I said, like not only was it their most least effective mode of offense, it was the most risky.
Yeah.
Because if you choose to pass, you open up the possibility of throwing interceptions. By choosing not to throw, I think even if USC had gotten Michigan into long situations, I still don't think they were going to have Alex Orji drop back and try to send the ball downfield.
Mm-hmm.
I think they were going to, try screens or, other sort of gimmicky plays to try and get out of it because. And this is where I credit Michigan greatly. This is where I credit Sharon more greatly. He understood where he could lose the game and where he could have lost the game is turnovers. And ultimately, why did USC lose the game? I mean, we can point to the defensive breakdowns, but when it comes down to it, anytime you're playing a ranked team on the road and you hold them to 20 points, like I think your defense should have done more than enough for what USC's offense would have been expected to produce in this game. USC lost this game on the pick 6. Turnovers. Again, figure out how you're going to prevent turnovers is how Michigan figured out how to win the game.
Yeah. At the same time, the pick 6 hurts, but SC also got a short field from their own forced turnover with Gentry forcing the turnover of Donovan Edwards. So like that's, I'm not going to say that it cancels out, but it sort of cancels out in a weird way. Either way, let's move on. In over under 4.5 Zachariah Branch offensive touches. I said you took the over on that, and it was 6. It was his most as a Trojan.
Yeah, career highs. Again, I don't get the negativity around Elijah Branch's around
Zachariah Branch's
performance.
Yeah. Last one, over under 141.5 Miller Moss passer rating. I took the over. It was under. The interception certainly didn't help, and the lack of efficiency in completion percentage didn't help. Miller Moss was 28 of 51, completing 55% of his passes for 283 yards, 3 touchdowns, and a very costly pick for a quarterback rating of $117 even. I will say that the rating is ugly. 117 looks absolutely bad because we were talking about like 140 is basically par, right? I still think that like Miller Moss like did his best. Like
I will tell you right now, I watch a lot of college football. I watch a lot of quarterback play around college football. the fact that Miller Moss had a rating above 100 is a minor miracle. I can tell you most of the quarterbacks that I watched on Saturday would have been absolutely completely cowed by what Miller Moss faced. Yeah, the numbers aren't great, but like I watched, Jackson Arnold give the game away for Oklahoma under less duress. I watched Avery Johnson give the game away for Kansas State under much less duress. Miller Moss should be applauded for managing a 117 in those circumstances, because no, very, very, very few quarterbacks would have been up to the task of even making that.
He did have a costly
possible.
fumble, very costly fumble that cost SC like what, 7 seconds maybe.
This was the worst offensive line performance that I have seen from USC ever.
Did you watch the 1998 Sun Bowl?
I did not watch the 1998 Sun Bowl.
Right.
The previous holder of that title was the Notre Dame 2023 game, and Caleb Williams, who, again, a lot of people talked about how Jaden Mayava's mobility might have helped USC against Notre Dame in a similar circumstance. Caleb Williams had a 100.04 passer rating. So,
yeah. All right, next one. Over under 6.5 Michigan yards per pass attempt was my last over under. You took the under, and kudos to you, I gotta say.
I could have gotten screwed on this, by the way.
Oh, if they would have hit one long one?
If they had hit one, like if instead of they broke a long run, if instead it was they broke a long screen pass or something like that, I could have gotten so screwed on this. But
well, okay, so it was 2.67 because it was 32 yards on 12 pass attempts. Let's just say it was 100 yards. Let's say there was a 70-yard gain there. 100 divided by 12 is what, 8.3. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah,
but didn't happen. You got it. All right. So for the week, you went 4-2. I went 3-4. Finally, we just didn't go 3-3, but unfortunately, you got the over/under win. Let's look at the season standings. You are now 10-8. I'm 8-10. What did the Rotbots do? We had multiple 6-0 people, including Trojan from Utah, Trevor M with a question mark, Pickle, and LaFleur. And we got to give a big shout out to Pickle, because not only did Pickle go 6-0, Pickle went 6-0 for the Utah State game.
Pickle is rising up. Yeah.
Pickle is looking crispy. Number one on the season leaders list is Pickle at 16-2. Jensen SC and Scotty C are tied for second place at 15-3. So big ups to Pickle. We should ask Pickle. Is it a like a Vlasic? A dill?
Whatever it is, I hope that Pickle enjoys their pickles, because
pickles are gross. Yeah.
You're the only pickle that I like.
That should be a drop. All right. That's over under for today. Let's get to the mailbag, shall we?
You've got mail.
All right, let's open up that bag. Let's start with 5-star review. We got a 5-star review from Jay Vandy on Apple Podcasts. Best SC football podcast out there. Hell yeah. Look at that. Look at us. Michael and Alicia strike the perfect balance of being huge SC fans while maintaining objectivity in their analysis and commentary. They put a lot of work into each episode, and it shows. On top of that, they are genuinely great people and a joy to listen to every week. Geez, Alicia, we're lying to these people pretty well. We're gaslighting them. I've never left an online review for anything until now, but these guys deserve it. Fight on, Jay Vandy.
Thank you, Jay.
Yeah,
that's a great review. Much appreciated. We love convincing people who don't normally leave reviews to leave reviews. That feels especially special. So much appreciated.
Yeah, we appreciate all reviews.
Jay Vandy's always a joy to have around in the chatting.
Yeah.
Jay Fandy's done really well on
Over under
before too.
Yeah. We appreciate you. We appreciate the reviews. You can always leave us a review on Apple Podcast. On Spotify, you can leave us a star review as well. They don't have written reviews, but you can leave us 5 stars there. If you're on YouTube, of course, hit the subscribe button, leave a like, and all of that. We keep getting a bunch of super chats from Stephen B on YouTube. And they always say thanks, so we want to say thank you.
Thank you.
Stephen, coming through in the clutch. We appreciate you. Cheers for all the super chats. We got a bunch of phone calls. Let's start with Fred.
Hey, Randy Troy. This is LA Fred calling. Well, I've spent the last day and a half watching, listening, and reading through various fan and media reactions to the loss at Michigan. And what's most frustrating to me is I keep hearing people say, oh, we were only one play away. If we'd have just stopped that 4th and goal or just didn't allow that 60-yard run down to the red zone in the final minute and a half, we'd have won this game. And I completely disagree. Very rarely are games decided on one specific play. Now, yes, it can happen, but most commonly it is a culmination of plays throughout the course of a game that leads to that point. For example, the first half offensive line domination by the Michigan defensive front. 1 or 2 or maybe 3 missed calls by a ref that could have possibly maybe given us a position to kick a field goal at the end of the first half. The 2 long touchdown runs that we can't get a tackle on. The pick 6. There's a bevy of plays you can point to that led to not being able to ultimately win this game. The poor clock management. How about having the lead with 5 minutes to go in the game, the ball at your own 40, and you go 3 plays for -3 yards and run a grand total of 58 seconds off the clock? That, to me, has a bigger impact of winning or losing this game than 1 4th down play at the goal line to make or break it. Going to side on the positive fence line that I'm seeing good things from this USC team and program moving forward. I saw a halftime adjustment for the first time, and I can't remember how long. We switched up the offensive line position. D'Anton Lynn made some great second half defensive adjustments, and that 63-yard run down to the red zone. For those of you not keeping score at home, that was Michigan's first down of the entire second half. So there are things that you could take away from this game that are positive. I know it sucks to lose, but I think this program is moving in the right direction. We could get some better offensive line recruiting and transfer portal influx. I think Lincoln Riley's going to have something moving forward. Have a good week. Beat the Badgers. Fight on, everybody.
Thanks for the call, Fred. I think, yeah, you make a million good points there. It wasn't just one play. At the same time, you said it wasn't just one play, and then you named like 8 different things that if any one of those could have gone another way.
I think
it could have gone another way.
I think sometimes the sort of the one play away thing gets misconstrued as though like literally the one play would have resulted in. Yeah, that does. I mean, in this case, literally, if USC gets that stop on 4th down, it literally does end the game and USC wins. But it's more about, if you look around college football, there are a lot of games that are decided by significantly more than one play's outcome changing. There are big swings of momentum and then a series of events that happens and results in one outcome or the other. And then there are those games where, yeah, if you change one small thing about that game, the result changes. You don't get to say that often actually in college football. And this was one of those games where the outcome literally changes if one of those plays change. And if you're on Michigan's side of things too, if we're living in an alternate universe where USC does get the one stop that they needed in whatever context, Michigan could be looking at this game as a 3 or 4 point loss and saying, well, if we just did that one, if we got that one, that one thing, then suddenly it's our game. Like
it's the agonizing thing about sports.
Yeah.
Right. That close games come down to those pivotal moments. And yeah, there's a butterfly effect. I think you can look at it and say, yeah, what if the face mask on the Hail Mary attempt was called? SC got a free play that they could run the kicker out there, and if he hits like a 45-yard field goal or whatever it would have been, then SC has 3 more points. So at the end, like, that means that it's 27-27. It's overtime. The game might not actually pan out that way, right? Like, there's a sliding door effect.
And Kenny in the chat says if USC doesn't get that lucky double turnover, the game looks much worse.
100%.
And I think that's why I say, when I say, like, it's not a literal thing, it's just sort of a turn of phrase that describes how much of how much the game was on a knife's edge for either side.
Yeah. And I think this goes to talking about sort of penalties too. We got an email from Brian that says, 1, roughing the kicker. Why did it not result in a USC first down? 2, the hit McCree took to the knee. Was that legal? 3, targeting is no longer reviewed by the booth? ? They had a lot of time to look at that. Feels like the Big Ten used to protect players, and this was like a hazing ritual for welcoming new members. I don't remember the roughing the kicker thing.
It was when USC was kicking out of their own end zone. It looked to me live that the kicker got run into. At least this is what my memory of it is. I don't know why that didn't get called. I think my guess, again, I didn't get to rewatch the game. My guess is they don't call that if you get blocked into him. So
yeah,
best guess is he probably got blocked into him.
The hit on McCree, like that, I don't think that's just an unfortunate football play. In terms of the targeting not being reviewed, I don't can the booth trigger the targeting review? Is that how it works? I can't remember how it works.
I thought the booth triggers it.
Is the booth triggers it?
Yeah.
I guess they could have done that, but I think when we talk about the refs, like, this reminds me so much of the Utah game 2 years ago, where it was literally the same situation. In the final minute of the game, SC has a 4th and goal to stop them, and they score on a 4th and goal, and then SC doesn't have time to come down and score to respond. But that was a game where there was a lot of questionable decisions. In that game, it was calls against SC in terms of roughing the passer. In this game, it was the complete opposite. It was calls that just weren't called. I think that while it's frustrating to look at, like, Shotgun Spratling put out pictures that he took, and you see holds in the background, and there's been a million clips of there's holding on this play, and there's holding on that play, and there's holding on this. Yeah, I think that's all frustrating. I think those are all things that, SC could have benefited from at the same time. There was a blatant PI that SC had that wasn't called. There was offside on the first or second drive of the game.
This is my point. Like, opposing fans and fans in general, like, misconstrue discussions about referees, and I see this in every sport too, because I'm a Liverpool fan, and we have these conversations about the Premier League refs, and, like, when you complain about a call that went against you, it's you're just being a homer or whatever. And, like, for me, my thing is always, I don't think the referees are biased. I think they just suck, and in any game, the fact that they suck is going to impact one team worse than the other. And sometimes it feels like it's your team, and sometimes it feels like it's the other team. And when it's your team, you complain about it more because you lost the game. That's just the way that, that's the way that it is. USC has more time to complain about all of those holding calls and the face masks and this, that, and the other thing, because USC fans lost the game, and it's easier to talk about that than how crappy the offensive line was. Michigan fans, if this game had lost, Michigan fans would have complained about the refereeing as well, and they would have been correct, because the refs were terrible, and not in a bias, they're not, whatever kind of way. They just literally were missing very basic, straight up, zero question kind of calls. Not even like the holding ones that are sometimes a little bit subjective.
Yeah, the face masks were the more egregious misses.
I mean, it's just like, and they should be on guard for those things every time. Those, like, the quarterback stuff is always really frustrating when it doesn't get called, because it gets called so often for so much less all the damn time.
Yeah.
And it's frustrating that games are impacted by the terrible state of refereeing. And do you know why the terrible state of refereeing continues? Because only the team because whichever team is complaining about it gets written off as like, oh, they're just whining because they lost. Like, that's why it continues to be terrible, because no one ever wants to do it except when they're on the wrong end of it. And when they're on the wrong end of it, they're the only one complaining about it. So there's never a group effort to say, hey, we got to get the quality of this up.
Well, I think that the two thoughts here, like one of them, I think that what anybody ever wants is consistency, right? And this is a big talking point in baseball, right? Like, if you're going to have a big zone or a small zone, whatever, as long as you're consistent, as long as I'm getting the same calls the other guy's getting, all those things. And I think that in this game, that was the case. There was consistency because they weren't calling anything. They weren't calling anything on either side. So, like, yes, I understand being upset about the holding calls, but like they literally weren't calling anything. This was sort of like the antithesis of the Pac-12 games, where we've talked about this on a recent pod. Like the Pac-12 was so litigious with the rule book, right? Like it was so by the book that everything was always PI, everything was always pass interference and roughing the passer and all of those things. There wasn't just let the players play. Like that was never out there. And I think that this game was very much the opposite of that. And while that's frustrating, at least it was consistent. You can't sit here and say that like SC got called for a hold on every play and Michigan didn't.
And that's
why
that wasn't
the case.
And that's why I think the holding stuff is sort of aside from the point. But like Shotgun Spratling put up some clips that are just like not even a question. Like this isn't the subjective, like there's holding on every play thing.
Right.
The Michigan 4th down where the play clock was, it was clearly a delay of game. There was zero question. That's a terrible miscall. The offsides on USC, that's a terrible miscall. Everyone and their mother saw that live.
Yeah.
The targeting on Makai Lemon, you can't let that go. Like that is an egregious, not the target, but the blindside block on Makai Lemon. Like that is a horrifically bad no call.
I don't know that it's a blindside block as much as it is like it looks like targeting, if nothing else. Well, it's like either way, like that can't be legal. You know what I mean? He's
an engaged blocker who is not,
because he is facing the direction of the guy he gets hit, so it's not really blindside.
But it's Jacoby Lane got called for the same for a thing where the player was facing him, but his head was turned. Makai Lemon in that situation is engaged with a blocker.
Right.
He cannot protect himself from that hit, and he gets absolutely taken out. Like that's these
is
are
it a defenseless player? Like what's the definition of that? Like something. It's got to be something.
Yeah. It's just again, it's not a complaining because USC would have won the game if those calls didn't happen. I don't know if I can make that statement. It's just like these things are just, you got to get these kind of calls right.
Yeah. Tim in the chat says, I did a bunch of research. The new illegal blindside block has to do with surprise, not the direction. That's interesting.
Which in that case is very much the hit on Makai Lemon is very much
would feel more like a surprise than a direction thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I don't know.
Also, he's being held as he gets walloped.
Yeah.
So
yeah, but it very much feels like the Utah game, in which I think you can work yourself into a tizzy, and get upset about the refs all you want. Like it's not gonna help anything. And the reality is like SC could have won anyways. It didn't have to be a situation where the refs were.
If you're USC's coaches, you point out that regardless of how the refs were calling this game,
yeah.
If you make a tackle, you win the game. If you have a fit in the run game, you win the game. If you don't throw a pick six, you win the game. It's catch a ball, you win the game.
100%.
There's a lot that goes into that.
Yeah. All right. voicemail from Britt.
This is Britt from Ann Arbor, formerly of Irvine. Don't know what else I can really say about the game other than some poor clock management, offensive line needs some help, et cetera, et cetera. But the big story, Ann Arbor is the best place to go for a football game. Unbelievable trip. If you haven't gone, and probably most Trojan fans haven't, you got to make the trip. People are nice, food's great, lots to do and see. Very just quaint little town. And bonus, I got to hang out with Scott Wolf before the game. So fight on, beat the Badgers.
What jersey do we think Scott Wolf was wearing?
He's probably wearing like a LAFC or.
No, I'm thinking like it's gonna be an obscure player. Gylfi Sigurdsson.
There you go.
Yeah.
Sure. Random.
Yeah.
Ann Arbor is definitely a place I want to go. Obviously, we didn't get to interact with Michigan fans in person, but I saw like USC Psycho was saying it was a great fan base to interact with.
Mm-hmm.
We had a bunch of really nice comments on some of our videos that were very classy. I woke up this morning to more sort of typical Twitter people getting pissed off because I made a comment about the refs because, that the refs suck, by the way. But, those are typical internet people. I don't necessarily put a lot of stock in the way that they talk. So, and mostly positive interactions with the Michigan folks.
Yeah, we got a I don't think do I have it in here? Let's see. I don't think I liked it. I should have liked it. Why didn't I like it?
Oh no.
There's a Michigan guy, I want to say his name was Jack. Had tweeted us here we go. Hold on.
Oh yeah.
No, I don't see it. It's somewhere. Tweeted us that he listens to opposing games all the time, or opposing podcasts like all the time before Michigan plays somebody, and he gave us the highest, like MGO blog is like his favorite, and he didn't think anyone could come close, but he said we came close, which is cool. So
we try to be fair.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Britt also emailed us and said, would you have rather had last Saturday's game end the way it did, or John Humphrey tackles Khalil Mullins for a short game, but Michigan manages to rumble their way to midfield, and on the final play of the game, Alex Orji completes a 50-yard Hail Mary to score the game-winning touchdown?
Having watched what happened to Baylor against Colorado, I can tell you right now, nothing kills me more than a completed Hail Mary that should have no business being completed. So absolutely, I'd take the way that this game ended, because at least I can sit here and say, you know what, missed tackles happened. Like it sucks, but use that as a learning experience, blah, blah, blah. Hail Marys are never okay to be completed. And if Alex Orji was allowed to get a ball down 50 yards down the field, and USC's DBs allowed anyone from Michigan to complete that pass, which by the way would have killed me in our over-under yards per pass.
Depending on how long it was.
I mean, depending on how long it was. Yeah, no. Because that I couldn't point to like, this is a learning lesson. That's just like, no, you guys are just.
By the way,
I can't live through another Hail Mary.
If it was 50 yards, you would have still hit the under.
Oh, sweet.
It would have been 6.15, assuming that it was 50 yards.
Mm-hmm.
Wait, hold on. No, it would have been 82 yards divided by 13, 6.3, just under. Because there have been 13. One more pass is 13. Yeah. 82 divided by 13 is 6.3.
There you go.
But, okay. Realistically, I think, you take how it went, I guess. But here's the thing with the Hail Mary. I think it depends on how the Hail Mary is.
No.
Yes. If it's Hayes Pollard not catching the Hail Mary and it goes through his hands, that's a Hail Mary where you're like, that was preventable. If it's the Hail Mary that happened with Colorado, that was preventable. If it's a tipped ball and it like bounces around in the air and it just goes to a dude who's like falling over and catches it, well, then the football gods just weren't on your side. You know what I mean?
No.
No?
No. As Kenny in the chat says, a Hail Mary is always the worst.
Well, I was thinking about this too. Like, SC could not stop a fourth down. But also, is there a single person that blames SC for not making the stop on fourth down?
No.
I don't think so, because for two reasons. One, they after the 65-yard game, it took Michigan 7 plays to get into the end zone. 7. They went 1 yard, 8 yards, 3, 2, 2, 1. Like they weren't like.
And this is at the end of the game. This is at the end of the game when your defensive line is at its defense is at its most gassed. And I think USC's defensive front, defense in general, did a really, really admirable job in that position. I think if you have anything to say about the way that played out, USC not being able to get the fourth down stop in those contexts is probably more to do with just, again, recruiting. And if USC had some bigger bodies with higher ceilings, that maybe that is the thing that separates the fourth down stop from not. But like what USC has there, the guys that USC has up front did such an admirable job. I have no complaints for the way that they tried to get that stop late. As I said in the CarCast, giving them a 60-yard chunk is what lost them the game. Michigan, there's no way the way that Michigan's offense was playing, there's no way they're able to get into that position to score without that big chunk play. And that's just unfortunate.
And because of how good SC's defense was, apart from the long plays, obviously, it almost didn't even lose them the game because, like I said, it still took a hell of a lot of effort for Michigan to get into the end zone. Mm-hmm. They were down 4. They needed the 7. They're the 6, right? Like they could not settle for the field goal. They picked up a 3rd and 1. It would have been a 4th down situation if SC would have got the stop there. It was a 4th and goal situation. They couldn't get that stop. So at some point, you're not going to get all the short yardage stops, right? Like you're just not. SC did as many as they could. All right. Voicemail from Darren. Darren called us twice right before we started recording. I grabbed the first one, but not the second one. So the second one we're going to listen to on Wednesday, but here's the first one.
Hey guys, my name is Darren. I'm calling in from Reno, Nevada. About the Michigan game, it's funny because before the season started, I don't think anyone would have given USC a chance to even compete in this game. But then when you beat LSU and you shut out Utah State, now the narrative is, oh, we're a national title contender. And I never actually bought into that. I don't think USC is as good as Texas, Ohio State, Georgia, maybe even Tennessee at this point. But perspective is a heck of a drug, man. And my takeaways from the game, first and foremost, Michigan has 3 NFL players on the D-line. I don't think that USC was ever going to be able to block them. And so it doesn't matter what your scheme and your coaching is. I mean, you can coach around that a little bit, but USC's offensive line is young. They're talented, but they're young, and they just weren't ready for that. A couple other things. I don't know that USC is not a better team on a neutral field. I know that going on the road was a big deal. And this team showed a lot of toughness and resiliency, and we haven't seen that in a long time. And so I think they're going to get better. The offensive line is going to get better. And if they can stay relatively healthy, I think that they're going to have a chance to win the last 9 games on their schedule. I know Notre Dame, Nebraska, and Penn State are the 3 toughest games left, and they're all at home. So love what you guys do. Thank you again for the show, and fight on.
Yeah, appreciate the call, Darren. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I think he's spot on with pretty much everything. As regards the offensive line, like I'm 100% in agreement that Michigan's defensive front, the individual talent there was always going to be a very difficult ask. I still do go back to USC didn't necessarily need the offensive line. Like USC had the worst offensive line performance you could imagine and still only lost by 3 points. USC didn't need a great offensive line performance. They just needed a functional one, not even a functional one. They needed a 50%, and they got
they needed a 20 on the PFF instead of 8.
Yeah. I mean, yes, and because of that, like the difference there to me does signal that there was something lacking in USC's preparation, in USC's game planning, in USC's play calling, in things that go beyond the individual players there who were definitely not put in position to succeed.
Yeah. And going back to the neutral field thing, I think that, if you replay this game on neutral field, I'd like SC's chances. If you played it 10 times over, I think SC probably wins 6 or 7 of them. But it also depends too. Like, are you playing it 10 times over based on what we saw in the first game? Like, is SC making are you making the adjustments from the beginning? Because that bodes well for SC. That you were able to make the adjustments, but also Michigan would be able to make their adjustments for a replay too, right? If you started this as it started on Saturday at 12:30 over and over again, then SC would have to learn in real time, and fix all those things in real time every time, which would certainly make it difficult. But that you can even sit here and say that SC wins like 6 out of 10 games if you replay this on a neutral field. That you can even say that, I think, is a remarkable place for SC to be, given where they were in November.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, this isn't the height of the Michigan team that we saw last year that completely shut down Michael Penix and dominated the playoffs and won the national championship. They aren't exactly that team. But their starting point from this season was much higher than where the Trojans were. And SC has been able to catch up. And that, I think, is a big testament to the changes that SC made in the offseason. Let's go to an email we got from Tony. Tony sends us a million emails. We love Tony from Denora, PA. Tony just set a record for the most words in his email.
Yeah,
this is
a chunky Tony email.
4 paragraphs I in here. Here we go. Michael and Alicia, this is Tony from Denora, PA. That was a tough loss. I thought we showed a lot of heart the way we played. I thought the second half adjustments were key on both sides of the ball. It gave us a chance to win the ball game. To me, the defense played a good game. Not great, but good. They made several plays during the game, and they were flying around, gang tackling, and keeping us in the game. The 3 long runs were the gut punchers, especially the last one where that missed tackle led to the loss. But even after that, the defense fought and just missed stopping them on 4th down. I'm proud of them. The offense was a struggle. The offensive line play was atrocious. Miller had no time to throw the ball, and the running game was shut down. Miller hung in there and made some plays when they presented themselves, but he missed a couple of open guys, and of course the pick 6 was huge, but Zachariah Branch has to come back on the ball. He was fading on that pass. Proud of the offense with the way they kept fighting and giving us the lead in the second half. We need to learn from this and come back next week and get back on top. Fight on. Tony from the Nora, PA. Tony, here's what I need you to do. Go to ap.com, apply for their game recap writer or what position, because you recap the whole thing. Like the game recap from Tony, spot it. You don't need the Wire report. You don't need the Reuters coverage of what happened in the game. It's all right here. Tony's got you covered.
Yeah, Tony's got it down. The only area where I will not even push back, because Zachariah Branch could have done more to prevent that pick 6, but for me, that pick 6, that pass should not be thrown.
It's a combination of everything.
It's a combination of everything, but when it comes down to it, if you're a quarterback throwing the ball in that context, the quarterback is more responsible for that ball being picked than the thing that the wide receiver could have done to prevent that ball being picked.
Yeah, I don't think that you in hindsight, and this is all hindsight 2020 for sure, but I don't know that you want to run, what's it at was it a hitch out or a hitch flat, whatever it was. I don't think you want to run that combo to Will Johnson's side, period.
Yeah.
I think you want to take that away. I know it's a quick pass, but also the pass was very telegraphed from Miller. If you're going to telegraph a pass like that, it's got to be a sure thing where a guy has the room and
you certainly
to catch it. And
you certainly can't telegraph a pass where Will Johnson is hanging around.
Yeah, and for a window that you have to put it into like that because it's such a quick short pass where you know that they're gonna be right on Zachariah Branch that way. I think it makes it difficult, but yeah, I think Zachariah Branch could have done better to defend it, but it's a little bit of I think it's a little bit of the play call. I think it's a little bit of the throw. I think it's a little bit of Zachariah Branch. I think everybody sort of plays a role there. Text message we got from Cam. Michael and Alicia, I have nothing to say besides it is Monday and I'm still sad because that game was so winnable. Anyways, I can't wait to hear the rant line. Here's my Seinfeld line of the week. You can drop $1,000 at Disney World like that, which is what USC should do for a new O-line coach. Love the show, Cam in Costa Mesa.
You can drop $1,000 in Disney World like that.
Yeah. You know what that's about?
I have no idea. I need to know the context.
Okay, so it's from the episode The Money. The Costanzas are wanting to spend all of their retirement money before they die and like make sure that they live it up. They don't want to die with all this money that they didn't spend. So they're thinking about like moving to Florida and being able to spend all the money. And George is like watching his inheritance like theoretically vaporize before him. So
you can drop $1,000 in Disney World like that.
Yeah, like that.
Like that. Yeah. I'm with Cam. This is the interesting thing. This is what we always say is it's better to lose a game early. I think that the rest of this season is very show me time for Josh Henson and this offensive line, because there is a world where this was a wake up call and this was the game that showed USC a very, very critical vulnerability, and it came against the team most suited to exploit that vulnerability, and that USC comes up with a better plan for when they play everybody going forward, because there are some, obviously we're going to point out Penn State and Notre Dame, but the teams like Wisconsin and Rutgers and those Maryland, they're gonna try to do the same. They're gonna try and see what kind of joy that they can get up front, and I think that this is an opportunity here for a major adjustment to be made and for USC to figure it out and be better for it down the line. If they don't figure it out, then yeah, maybe it is time to make a change.
Yeah. Email we got from Andrew, titled, quote, "The Rot Historian." You have a soundboard clip for throwing short of the sticks on 4th down, and serendipity, that was our last game against Wisconsin, Andrew, in Madrid. Okay, I went and searched and searched and searched. Could not find it. I think that there might have been like a Rant Line montage from that game. And maybe I can find that Rant Line montage somewhere. But I don't have anything in the soundboard folder from that. The other thing I wanted to go back and pull up was, remember the 2015 Notre Dame game? There were a lot of shovel passes. And Brandon, remember Brandon used to call in all the time?
Yeah.
I don't know. Does he hate us now? I don't know.
He must hate us.
Yeah. If you're still listening, call in still. We miss your calls. He called in and he's like, shovel passes. Shovel passes. So while you were talking about shovel passes earlier, I was like, scurrying through the folder, seeing this, like, did I ever make that a drop? No, I didn't. I wish I did, though. Wish that was a drop too.
I was laughing because Matt Barkley tweeted, "How do you throw that short of the sticks?" And my first thought was, I don't know, ask Cody Kessler.
Okay. Yes, but I will say, of egregious short of the stick throws, it's not remotely as bad as the Cody Kessler one. The Cody Kessler one was on the last play of the game. Literally, it's a Hail Mary situation. There was like, what, 4 seconds on the clock or something like that. You were never going to be able to get an out route to move it up. Also, it was 4th down, so like that was a stupid thought anyways. Like that was never in the million years should that have been attempted.
Yeah.
This one,
I mean, again, Miller
this was
is
more
getting...
lack of field awareness, if anything, than like poor decision making. Like Jacoby Lane was right there. He made the catch. Like if anything, yeah, if he's backed up a couple feet, great. But also if he's backed up a couple feet, is he as open for the catch? Maybe not. I don't know.
Yeah.
Either way, that's not why he lost. We got a bunch of questions here in YouTube. In the chat. So let's rapid fire these. Fighting on MC says, do you see them continuing to use freshmen for the O-line?
Okay, here's the problem. Who else do they use? Like, I think this is my biggest this is truly my biggest gripe against Josh Henson at this point. Is the problem for USC is that they don't have anybody else to point to. The only guys there to replace the other guys are freshmen.
Yeah.
The only non-freshman in the 2 deep is Gino Quinones. And yeah, maybe it is time to let Gino Quinones get in there and see what he can do. But I still am I'm not looking at Gino Quinones as like a savior, because again, he is still coming back from a devastating knee injury, and who knows if he's ready to play. I don't know.
I just have to say about Gino Quinones, this is not, anything against him or anything, but this is his 6th season.
The fact that Gino Quinones is being looked at as like a potential savior for USC is pretty damning against USC's recruitment.
But if Gino Quinones was looked at by the coaching staff of being a difference maker, he would already be getting time.
We would have seen him in that game.
We would have seen him. This is one of those things where, like, it's backup quarterback syndrome, right? Where, but why isn't this guy? If this guy was playing, things would be better. Like, oh, maybe that guy plays in practice, and that's why he's not playing. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not saying that's the case literally with Quinones, but just in general, I think that as we go forward, anybody should be game for being for playing on that offensive line, no matter what age they are. Presumably overage. You don't want to like throw a 12-year-old out there. But I don't care what class they are. You don't care what their redshirt status is. If they are able to make a difference, you play them. If they are not, you don't play them. If you need to find out by playing someone and then discovering that they're not the guy, then that happens. If that's what happened with Elijah Page and then they make the change, then that's what happened with Elijah Page and they made the change. Like, they need to be better.
Or
so how do you find a way to get better? Is it by moving guys around? Is it by scheming it better? I think it's a little bit of everything. So you just find a way to get better.
Yeah,
I don't have the answer.
I think you're right. Like, I do not expect USC to do some massive offensive line changes in terms of personnel. HR picking stuff in the chat gives a really intriguing option of having Killian O'Connor take over at center and Jonah Monheim to tackle, or to right guard. I think USC wishes that Jonah Monheim could be the left tackle at this point. But I can't imagine USC moving Jonah Monheim from center now that they've made him that position, especially because of how critical center is for, making all the calls at the line and all of that. So I don't see that happening. But if USC wanted to do something drastic, moving Jonah out to left tackle would be the drastic thing that maybe is the really bold and see how it goes kind of thing.
Yeah.
Could be
That
interesting.
particular option.
But again, if we are talking about Gino Quinones could take over at center too, theoretically. But again, if we are talking about Killian O'Connor or Gino Quinones as the saviors of this offensive line, then no shade to those guys. But again, then there have been recruiting failures because that shouldn't be the position USC is in. And that is that is the position USC is in. USC's best option right now to shake up the offensive line might literally be to put the walk-on center, Killian O'Connor, to make him a starter.
Yeah.
And Killian has done a very admirable job when he's been in there, when he's had to go in there. I'll give him that. But like that USC, a USC that wants to compete for Big Ten titles cannot be in that position.
Yeah. Kenny says, do you think this is specifically an issue with Michigan's defensive line, or could this be a situation where the Big Ten in general is more physical than they prepared for? I am not in the camp that the Big Ten plays a game that is completely foreign to what SC knows. SC has been in a conference with Stanford, body blow theory Stanford, not the recent Stanford, but body blow theory Stanford. They've had to play Utah every year for the last decade. They have to play Notre Dame every year. They are used to this. Mind you, SC has failed a lot of those tests against those teams. I think that speaks more largely to the point than anything else. I think we will learn if the same thing that happens against Michigan happens against Wisconsin, then yeah, maybe you can start to say that like it's just the Big Ten. But I don't expect these issues to happen when SC plays, Minnesota.
To me, this
not in the same.
No. What happened in this game was not about physicality. Michigan didn't out-physical USC on the offensive line. They were better technically. It was technique, it was talent, it was skill, it was moves. Like
it was everything.
It wasn't physicality that cost USC. This wasn't USC's offensive linemen being in position to make blocks and Michigan just like swatting them to the side. No, it was everything. This was USC not being ready to compete against talent like Mason Graham, like Kenneth Grant, like Josiah Stewart. Like it doesn't have anything to do with weight or muscle mass or anything. It has to do with skill, and it has to do with preparation, and it has to do with scheme. And the thing for USC here is, yes, this is probably the most talented defensive line that USC will face this year in the regular season, man to man. So USC can look at it and say like this was the worst matchup to have, but when it comes down to it, like you have to be better prepared to work with what you've got.
Mm-hmm.
And again, if Fresno State and Arkansas State were able to neutralize this defensive front more capably than USC, then that's a problem.
Yeah.
But we also saw USC's offensive line do well enough against LSU with some solid defensive line talent there that this, like, I'm not ready to hit the panic button and say this is all about USC's offensive line.
Mm-hmm.
I think you have to give Michigan a lot more credit than that.
Yeah.
But it's sort of, again, a multifaceted thing. And like you said, if it continues to be a problem against Wisconsin, then I don't think that's a Big Ten issue. I think USC would be having these same issues in the Pac-12 because, again, we've seen USC have the same issues on the offensive line in the Pac-12 when the offensive line just wasn't good enough.
Yeah, here's a question for you, and I don't know the answer myself. It's like I'm genuinely asking. If you only saw the second half of this game, Are you feeling the same way about the offensive line?
Yeah, because I know that the second half was better than the first half, but the
Yes.
second half was still pretty darn bad.
The second half was productive despite the issues. The first quarter in particular was completely unproductive, right?
Well, and that's
But
the thing. In the second half, USC got some the running game going a little bit.
Yeah.
And in the second half, it was again a more functional. Like it was what I was talking about, where it's like you can have a failing grade, but if it's a 50%, you're still getting 50% of your answers right, and it doesn't completely tank your overall grade in the class.
Yeah.
But if you score a 15 or a 20 or an 8 out of 100, then that's significantly worse than the same F grade, but it's a 50%.
Yeah, I guess what I'm saying is like I'm not trying to rose things up, but I think there's a world where if it was only the second half that you saw, I think and SC wins the game. I think we get on the CarCast and treat the offensive line performance like we did against LSU, in which wasn't great. But it also wasn't panic button pressing.
It was functional.
Yeah, and one of the things we talked about the run game going into the game when we had our USC wins if video, like you talked about like selectively running, right? Like like you don't have to run on every down, like pick your spots. And you look at Woody Marks's runs in the second half. 12 yards, 2, 8, the big 65er, 3, 3, 2. I think that's fine. Like even if you take out the 65 there, 12, 2, 8, 3, 3, 2 is a lot better than what you saw in the first half, which was 0, -2, 5, 1, 0. You know what I mean?
I was saying that if USC was running and getting 3 yards, that was enough.
Yeah.
Because at least it puts you in a situation where you can, if you run on first down and get 3 yards, you're 2nd and 7. You only need another 3 yards to get into a 3rd and manageable situation.
Yeah.
You can work with that. Obviously, you want better than that. But if we're sort of scraping the bottom of the barrel of expectations, like you can work with that. And you can work with the second half offensive line performance in theory. You certainly want better than that.
Right.
But you can work with that. You can win a game against Penn State or Notre Dame if that was your basement. The second half against Michigan offensive line performance, you can
it's
win
salvageable.
Games.
It's salvageable. Yeah. You look at Quentin Joyner in the second half. He only carried the ball in the second half 11, 5, and 7. He averaged 7.7 yards per carry.
You can work with that.
You absolutely like that is. To me, that's your dream scenario. If you average 7.7 a pop, like he only had 3 carries, so extremely small sample size, but still, I think that one of the there was a comment from Sports Geek 91. SC won't play another front 7 like that again, but Penn State and Notre Dame will be trouble. Yeah, I keep thinking about Penn State of the mindset of Penn State is Michigan with a competent offense. A competent, balanced offense that is able to pass, right?
Yeah.
And that I think does feel like the danger zone matchup because SC was able to get in a position to nearly win this game, in part because Michigan had to be one-dimensional and scrap their way for yards and then live off the big play, right? Penn State, in theory, won't have to do that. Although maybe you make the argument that like maybe that makes them easier to defend or less likely to give up big plays because you have to, sit back and more cover 2. I don't know. I don't know.
USC,
we can talk about that when we get there.
USC needs, I think you compare the Penn State like offensive matchup a little bit more with LSU. And I don't know that Drew Aller is a better quarterback than Garrett Nussmeier, but they might have better balance on that team.
Sure.
But the fact of the matter is that USC, again, with the worst offensive line performance I've ever seen from a team in Cardinal and Gold, from a USC team, to be fair, USC still scored 24 points. USC needs to get better. USC needs to get more stable offensively and to be able to withstand these kinds of defenses. But that's still 24 points on the road against a team that is absolutely demolishing your offensive line. I think you go into Penn State expecting the defensive challenge to be the challenge for your offense to be similar. But if we're sort of like comparing, we're still looking at USC being capable of scoring 24, 27
in the worst case scenario.
Points in the worst case scenario where you don't fix your offensive line. And
with this defense,
and at this stage, I'm starting to trust this defense because again, like you know, the defense was by and large very good, and the breakdowns are obviously frustrating, and all of that. But like, the defense wasn't responsible for 7 of the 7 points that are the difference in the game. The defense is not responsible for those. So to me, like, these matchups are not like, it's not a dire matchup. You still need things to go right for you on both sides, but I think things are more likely to go right for you on both sides in that game than what you saw in this one.
I think it also helps that SC was efficient on offense when it came to red zone. 3 of 4 officially.
That's
it was basically 3 for 3.
Yeah.
It's 3 or 4 officially because of the fumble stolen back by Woody Marks, and they ultimately get into the red zone again on the not the same drive, but it's the same drive. Wink, wink. They do have to settle for a field goal early on, and if they don't settle for a field goal there, maybe it's 28-27, and I don't know. Here's a thought, but before we go to the last couple comments to mention and wrap this thing up. This is hypothetical bullshit, so just take it for what it is. Say SC makes the field goal. They call the face mask on the last play of the first half. There's a 40-something yard field goal, and it's made. And SC goes into the half down 14-6. And all this other scoring stays completely the same. And Michigan scores with, 30-something seconds to go to make it 27-26, pending an extra point. Do you go for 2 if you're Sharon Moore?
Well, the conventional wisdom says if you're the home team, you go to overtime.
Yes. I argue in that situation, I go for 2.
I think there's an argument to go for 2 because where do you're starting on the 2-yard line, right?
Yeah.
I think if you're Michigan, you trust your running. You trust that you can do what scored that touchdown.
Given how hard it was,
time.
Yeah, given how hard it was for them to put together touchdown drives, and they lived and died on the 3 big runs.
Counterpoint: if I'm Sharon Moore, I'm looking at overtime and thinking, my defense is not going to let these guys score.
Yeah, but also Michigan had 2 first downs.
Yeah.
In the second half.
Yeah. And
SC was still able to, gain stuff. Also, you start overtime at the 25. You're already in field goal range. So I don't know. All right, really quick, rapid fire these last ones. Roger Dodger, why didn't Zachariah Branch return anything on special teams? He returned 3 punts. He didn't return any of the kickoffs. The answer is analytics, metrics. That was by design, by choice. From SC, because
I think USC fans might have a warped perception of special teams and Zachariah Branch at this point, because if Zachariah Branch opts to return any of those kicks and gets stopped at the 15, people are furious at him, just like they were last year when he did that a bunch of times.
Yeah.
For me, in this kind of game, in a ranked on the road game, my number 1 request from special teams is to not blow the game.
Mm-hmm.
So being better safe than sorry, absolutely. I think that Zachariah Branch did the right thing on returns. I think that expecting, like going into this game, thinking that if Zachariah Branch didn't break off a long punt return or break off a long kickoff is a failure, like that's such a warped perspective. Zachariah Branch's return situation in this game was perfectly adequate. It was not a problem.
We talked about it in the CarCast. I totally understand that the metrics favor taking the ball at the 25 every time. I agree. I like science. I am pro science and math. I know that that's the right thing to do. Because Branch is one of the few guys in the country who has a very decent shot to give you more than the 25. Personally, I'd roll the dice, but I understand why you don't. So I get it. All right. Gustavo says, "Hey, Rot team, I got here late, but I want to hear your guys' take on possible offensive line changes. Do you think any shuffling will happen in the next couple of games?" I don't know. I think we're going to learn against Wisconsin. Are you adamant about actually wanting Monheim to kick out to tackle?
No, I don't think they're making any changes. Before I do that, Michigan allowed a 0 kick returns of any note last year. They allowed 2 kick returns of 20 plus yards all of last year. Like, this is not a vulnerable special teams team. This is not the one to freak out about. And fair catching inside the 15 in this context, considering how devastating the offensive line was, the last thing I ever want to risk in this game is Michigan backing USC up to the 2-yard line. That you cannot risk that. Catch every ball inside the 15 so long as it's not inside the 10. Absolutely, you don't take that risk, in my opinion. As for the center, the center, no, I don't think USC is going to. I think that is USC could make a lot of different changes to the offensive line. I think the last one that they would do is moving John Monheim from center. I think that you could. The most likely that we're likely to see is Mason Murphy staying at left tackle and Tobias Raymond staying at right tackle. I think that's a Band-Aid at best. Maybe you see Gina Quinones get more time if they decide that he's in there. Micah Benuelos is certainly somebody that you could start to look at and say maybe if he warrants enough, maybe give him a shot. But realistically, USC does not have the depth to be changing things on this offensive line. That's why it's such a difficult spot.
Yeah. HR Pickens says that Moss targeted Zachariah Branch 10 times. Did Michigan leave him open, knowing he would drop passes?
Again, this thing about Zachariah Branch, he had 1 drop in this game, and there were multiple other receivers who also had a drop in this game. At least that they're
Hudson had one.
They're credited against. Like, I don't know where this is coming from. That he was the one. He was the problem in terms of USC's passing game. He was the only one getting thrown to because maybe he was the only one getting open. I don't know.
Well, I think you look at it, Zachariah Branch is someone who more often than not is going to line up in the slot or a little inside, right? Will Johnson is someone that they want to avoid. He's going to be on the outside. And Hudson and Lane are going to be outside more often than not. So I think that those guys got fewer targets. Jacoby Lane got 6 targets. According to Stat Broadcast, Zachariah Branch got 13. Woody Marks got 10 as a dump-off guy. Kyron Hudson got 7. I think that a lot of that has to do with Michigan has good corners. And I think that, that could take away a lot of the looks on the outside. Another thing that we talked about in the Notre Dame game a few years ago, back when SC had the greatest wide receiver core ever, Ahmad Ra, Tyler Vaughns, Michael Pittman, Drake London, all in the same wide receiver core. Sometimes you pick and choose. And if there was a case where Michigan said that we're going to value the guys outside and take away the big plays from Jacoby Lane and Kyron Hudson and Deuce Robinson and let Zachariah Branch beat us, it wasn't because Zachariah Branch, they wanted to leave him open so he could drop passes.
I can
It's because
guarantee
SC hasn't used him as a deep threat. And so I totally understand they're like wanting to take away, not give up the deep play. Also, the plays weren't developing long enough for SC to be able to throw the deep balls outside anyways. So
I guarantee you the last thing that Michigan wanted was the ball in Zachariah Branch's hand.
yeah,
I will
of
tell
course,
you that.
of course. All right. Last thing, Lamont says, question tonight. What the hell do you think Reggie Bush is doing? That isn't the way to be welcomed back to the family. Do you think this jeopardizes him leading the team out on the field this year? Bad look. We talked about this earlier, that a lot of this is probably legal posturing. Here's one thought that I'm going to throw out there. I get it. It doesn't look good. It in the sense of like optics or whatever, but it's not your money. It's not my money. It's I guess unless someone on the board of trustees is listening, it's none of our money. Literally, why do we care? Like, you know what I mean? I don't care. I don't. Yeah, like it sounds like turmoil, and you don't want turmoil. You don't want bad press or all those things. But like, this could just be legal posturing that doesn't mean anything. I don't know. I also, like I said, it's not our money. It's not our money. All right. That's gonna wrap it up. We've gone literally more than 2 hours.
Yeah, I'm struggling.
Yeah. All right. Go get well. And we will be back later this week to preview SC in Wisconsin. More videos coming your way this week on YouTube as well. So make sure you're subscribed there. Email address, rantline@fanside.com. Phone number, 818-643-7227. Until next time, we will see ya. See ya.
See ya.
See ya.